we do a sound check.
Can online people hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep.
Great. And we can hear you. So, good.
Recording.
Great. Well, we can get started. Welcome everyone to the March 14th Planning Board meeting of 2024 Planning Board meeting. I will call the roll. Bill Santos, I'm here. Mike Wiedemer here. Sam Trapani
Here.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Andrew Hollister. Orlando Rivera here. Dave Watson
Here.
Robert Barley. Andre Evans. Legislator Barnhart. Welcoming back Legislator Colby.
Yeah. I take George's place, just for clarification for anybody.
Okay, great, thank you. Jeff McCann. Adrian Green. Amy Grower. Laura Smith. Robert Franklin. Josette Mangieri. Richard Tantalo.
Here.
Christina Doherty. Mike Garland. And Sean Murphy. Great. Yishin, would you like to present staff? That seems like a big list.
My name is Yishin Lin, and I'm the senior planner with the Department of Planning Development. And with me here today, planning staff is our planning manager, senior associate planner, Pat Gooch here. And we also have other CIP department staff represented here. I know from Department of Parks, Information Services, and Public Safety, and also MCC, and many other departments
Yes.
here. And we also have a department staff join us via Zoom. We have Department of Transportation. We also have from the library, and also have medical examiner's office, and have for elections representative here too also.
Great, thank you all for attending. Announcements and communications. I did announce Legislator Colby coming back to the board here. Any other announcements or communications? Sean, I see you. Yep, Sean Murphy entering the room. Any other announcements or communications by board members or staff? Hearing none. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the proposed 2024 through 2029. That's not right, correct? It's the 2025 through 2030 capital improvement program. And yes, the public hearing is now open. I'd like to introduce Pat Gooch to the floor. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Chairman Santos. So there we go. Perfect. Okay. So my name is Pat Gooch, as Ishan mentioned, and as Chairman Santos mentioned, I'm the Senior Associate Planner with the department. The Planning Department is responsible for facilitating the capital improvement program for Monroe County in conjunction with many of the departments of Monroe County, most of them represented here, and the Finance Department playing a critical role as well. So between the two departments of Finance and Planning, we ensure that this process gets conducted every year. So let's get into it. If you have not ever visited our homepage, I encourage you to do so. You can find a copy of the proposed CIP and past CIPs at www.monroecounty.gov/planning-CIP. You'll see there's some instructions there, a large button on the side, and then a list of CIPs down below. So what is the CIP, or the Capital Improvement Program? So the Capital Improvement Program is a process of, let me actually step back here. The Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, is a 6-year plan to guide the county's investment in assets that enable Monroe County to continue providing county services and promote economically prosperous, healthy, safe, and a fun community. This process is codified in the county charter and administrative code and entrusted to the Department of Planning and the Department of Finance. The Monroe County Planning Board is charged with reviewing, considering, and recommending the 6-year CIP to the county legislature and ranking the capital budget projects, which is the first year of the CIP, or in this case, 2025, in order of relative priority. One important note, because the CIP looks 6 years out, we expect changes to occur. That happens with every program, and it is anticipated. It's normal, it's a part of the process, and something we welcome. We welcome that because we know that needs and priorities will shift over time, and looking 6 years out, we can't always anticipate the needs of the buildings we have, the needs of the facilities we have, and what may change in terms of funding sources or grants that might move up projects that we were anticipating. So you'll see that if you visit some old CIPs, they will look different from this CIP if you look at the same year. And next year's CIP will also look different from this CIP for the exact same years. That is part of the plan. So what is a capital project and what is the CIP program? So projects the county pays for through long-term debt and other non-debt sources, such as the operating budget, grants, or intergovernmental aid. Non-debt sources are included to facilitate coordination with the debt sources and because it presents a total package of information for county decision makers. As we all know, essentially that sums up that we have to look at the cash that Monroe County has on hand, the anticipated revenues and income that are incoming, the debt, all that factors into the personal spending decisions that a person would make, and we have to do that for the county as well. The county has to take into account all those factors to make sure that what we are doing and how we're spending money is the most advantageous to make sure that we can maintain our operations as a county, providing services and amenities to over 750,000 people. So the Monroe County we have administrative standards to help us identify a little more detail about what is a capital project. So the administrative code and the county charter lay out a broad process. That process is further narrowed by some definitions that finance and planning and the county has worked on over the years. So those specifically are the cost of any bonded capital project should exceed $100,000 and have a useful life of at least 5 years. The cost of any cash capital project should be $250,000 or less and should have a useful life of less than 5 years. Equipment and motor vehicles other than passenger vehicles may be bonded for if product meets the cost and useful life criteria. See the first bullet, 100,000 in 5 years. Normal annual maintenance expenses, landscaping, things of that nature are not capital expenses. Non-reoccurring repairs are, such as roof patching. Monroe County must have ownership or long-term interest for a term at least equal to the financing. And this, of course, is where the Department of Financing plays a tremendous role in making sure that these parameters are adhered to. And you'll notice as we go through the program that different departments have different funding sources. Some are 100% consistent throughout. Others have a mix of them. And that is largely dependent on where their revenue is coming in from. And then also what type of work, what type of projects they're working on. They may fall into some of these categories and not others. So a little bit about the potential funding sources in the capital improvement program. So you'll see in your books that were provided last week and on the presentation slides soon to come, that the county has really 5 main funding sources. So that is county revenues or county cash, district projects, enterprise user fees, state and federal grants, private funding. You'll notice that there's a portion of those that each have a C after them. So a CC stands for county cash. That is money from the operating budget. District cash is money from operating cash on hand for that entity. Same thing with enterprise cash. So within the 5 main funding levels, there's a little nuance or subsectors of funding as well. So this is a tree map that kind of shows the overall layout of where the CIP funding sources for the 6-year 2025-2030 program are. You'll see on the far left-hand side that county is 33%. In the middle, district is 29%. County cash is 14%. Federal grants are 8%. District cash is 5%. State is 4%. Enterprise is 4%. And enterprise cash is 2%. One thing to note about this is you'll see that we have some similar colors on there. That is on purpose. Those sources are similar to each other. The blues represent the county cash and county funding. The district and district cash are coming from the same source as well. And then the green represents the enterprise or enterprise cash. You cannot see on here that there is actually a very small amount of private funding that is built into this CIP as well. It's less than 0.01%, so it doesn't show up on many of the charts because it's so small. I'll draw it to your attention when we get to that specific project.
Yeah, so my understanding, that
Yep.
slide correctly, that of the county expenditures, about a third are being funded with cash and 2/3 bonded? or
No.
financed?
So 33%, so that is, and Josette, please jump in if you'd like. That is the revenues and income related to property tax and other things and sales tax.
I got one of the funding sources. I got it.
Yes. So that the county cash is and county are from the same source in terms of that's the pool that they're drawing from. But the cash is what's actually on hand in terms of operating expenses from departmental budgets.
I see. Thank you.
And similarly, that's how the district works and the enterprise and enterprise cash works as well. So now we'll get into some department slides. So with this, you'll see that these are the ranking of Monroe County departments by funding source. So it's really an homage to that previous slide showing you the breakdown of the overall funding sources, but this is by department through the 6-year program. One thing to note here, these are 100% stacked columns, so they don't represent any difference between the funding levels. As we know, some departments spend more than others, but this is just to help you understand that certain departments aggregate funds from a variety of sources. Certain departments have funds from only 1 or 2 sources. So for example, we can see Monroe Community College is that orange and blue there. So that blue, and this is a good example, Monroe community colleges in New York State are the host county pays 50% of capital projects, and then the community college pays 50%. So the orange represents state funding, the blue represents county funding. And as you look across that, you can see the different colors. The colors are consistent throughout the slides, so that darker blue is the county funding, the slightly lighter blue is the county cash, district is lilac, district cash is more of a traditional purple. The green or the light green is enterprise, dark green or more vivid green is enterprise cash. Private is white, and of course, as I mentioned before, because it's so small, you really can't see it, but that is represented in DOT highways and bridges. And then state is orange and federal is red. And you'll notice that the airport, of course, has a large amount of federal funding and a decent amount of state funding as well. So this is that exact same data, but drilled down by the actual spending per department. So it's a little harder to understand the funding sources, but it is easier to understand what departments are spending money and what volume of money they have to spend to complete their missions. So you'll notice the differences there with the DES Pure Waters for this 6-year program being the highest in the purple there. And then all the other departments throughout are kind of at a smaller level. So this slide is the total funds proposed by department and division. So you can see here the percentages of overall spending per department. So you'll see that, and I will actually draw your attention to it. There's 16 divisions or focus areas representing 13 departments. That is the Department of Aviation, Monroe County Library Services, Monroe Community Hospital, Monroe Community College, Department of Public Health, Medical Examiner, Department of Information Services, County Clerk, Board of Elections, Monroe County Office of the Sheriff, Department of Public Safety, Department of Transportation, which has 2 divisions, the Division of Highway and Bridges and Traffic Engineering, the Department of Parks with the county parks and then the Seneca Park Zoo, Department of Environmental Services with 3 divisions represented, Solid Waste, Engineering and Facilities Management, and Pure Waters. So one thing that we try to do is take a look at this as well by the program area. And this is just another helpful way to break down how we are spending money as a county. And so with this, you'll see that we have aggregated some of those departments into program areas, sectors, or spaces that they work in. So this slide illustrates those aggregations, and those aggregations are on the top, you see that 35.9% of the 6-year CIP is dedicated to waste and resources recovery. So that is solid waste and pure waters. There's also parks, you'll see there at 3%. Transportation, which includes highway and bridges, traffic engineering, and aviation at just under 0.25% at 24%. And then we also have public safety, which is the medical examiner, sheriff, and public safety at 10.3%. And then on the far left-hand side, you'll see that there are essentially departments that are separate. Some of those are staff departments. Some of those are public-facing entities as well, but they don't fall into easy categorization. One thing to note is that the nearly 60% of the 6-year program is related to the 2 largest segments of that pie, which makes sense. A CIP is related traditionally to capital projects, traditional infrastructure and building of things. And so those 2 areas, pure waters, pipes in the ground, solid waste. So we have recovery facilities, including recycling and landfills, and then transportation. Of course, we have roads, bridges, and then the airport as well. So that the breakdown there makes a good deal of sense in that way. One thing I'll note is that that 60% are resources that we rely on 365 or 366 days a year if you're in a leap year like this year. So we're getting our money's worth. So this drills down a little bit further into the 2025 budget year. So similar to the earlier slides, this is broken out by funding sources and department. And this is specifically for the upcoming 2025 budget year that the board will be voting on between now and next week. So there's not a lot to note here other that you can see kind of where the funding is coming from. You'll see, and I'll mention it when we get to it, DOT has a significant amount of federal funding that has been slotted into 2025. Of course, there's the district funding is in the middle there in purple, which is a significant portion as well. For those of you who have stayed attuned to the CIP, this chart looks familiar. The blue bars represent the prior year's adopted CIP, which is 2024-2029. The red bars are the proposed CIP of 2025-2030. Stripe bars are 6-year program totals. Revised funding is shown with red numbers if funding decreased, or green numbers if funding increased as compared to the adopted CIP for the prior year. Red arrows mean that funding schedule changes, and any projects that are italicized are new to this year's CIP. So these are the funds by department. And you'll see here that this is just a quick way to kind of show you the difference between the 24 and 29 CIP to the current proposed CIP of 25-29. If the bars are relatively equal, that funding has been steady throughout those 2 programs. If there's a large discrepancy between the 2, you'll see that funding has changed either dramatically or in minuscule ways for some departments. And of course, that goes both ways. Some departments spend less over the new cycle. Some departments have to spend more. And that's just related to needs and what needs to happen at that with that department. So now we'll get into some specific departments. And I'll go through this relatively quickly, but please do stop me if you have any questions. So the county clerk, note that the county clerk is not always in the CIP. There are some departments that when they have capital projects to take on, they pop into the CIP, and then when they have nothing going on, they pop out. Good examples of that are county clerk and the Board of Elections. The county clerk had a proposed project for 2025, which is a records digitization project. They're looking to digitize some of their records in order to consolidate some space and to better save some of those older historic records that take a beating with wear and tear and looking at them. Ishan, can you adjust the way this, we're slightly off? Thank you. Okay, so moving to the next, Department of Information Services has a new project for 2025, but their overall 6-year spending is approximately 1.5 million lower in the 6-year program. And that new project is related to ERP system replacement, which is really a employee portal for HR and management. Board of Elections, as I mentioned, they come in and out of the CIP. They were not in the last year's cycle, but they were in the prior year's cycle. The Board of Election enters and exits the CIP as warranted. In 2025, they are updating their electronic poll books. This is in part to stay up to date with the security enhancements of voting. They've done this in the past, but this is a new update that's going on. So they have about $4 million anticipated spending in 2025, 2026. The Health Department Medical Examiner, their program stays relatively static throughout the years. It is almost identical to the previous year. The toxicology lab has a rotating schedule of equipment replacement, to ensure they can stay up to date on analysis that is necessary for health and safety in Monroe County. Ooh, or even farther afield at this point, Ishan. So Monroe Community College, as I mentioned before, New York State Community College counties, the host counties share 50%. So you'll note here that wherever the community college is spending money, Monroe County has agreed to spend money as well. MCC's program is approximately $20 million less than the prior adopted CIP. This is largely related to a project that was completed, or the spending for that project was completed in 2024. So it no longer shows in the CIP. And that is the ATC STEM project that this board previously advanced in the CIP program. All right. And we have a couple slides for each of these programs. So I'll slide through them quickly. Oh, there we go. Monroe Community Hospital. So Monroe Community Hospital is an enterprise department. Something I noted earlier is that different departments have different funding sources. There are certain departments that are enterprise departments or generate their funding through either user fees or reimbursement. And so Monroe Community Hospital is, I believe, the first example of that. Just want to draw that to your attention. Their CIP has increased by $2 million, but for the most part, the other projects are static. One thing you'll note is that there's green and red on a lot of these slides. That is adjustment to the funding schedule. One thing that Monroe County departments did concentrate on this year is making sure that their numbers were as up to date as possible in the 6-year program due to the cost of inflation over the past couple of years. We have always done that for the budget year with a focus on that, but we paid special attention to it this year in the out years to make sure that we were satisfying and understanding that what the projects would cost, in part due to receiving bids and realizing that they were coming back higher than we anticipated. So that is a proactive effort on the departments.
Is that all the departments in the line or just this one?
Nope, that is all departments. So we requested specifically that they pay attention to the out years, so that way
Because I know they talk about that.
Yeah.
County land all the
Exactly, yeah. And so in response to that, we tried to make sure that the numbers were as accurate as possible. But to be fair, looking 6 years out, it's
tough.
It's tough, yeah. And that is one of the reasons why you'll see that the CIP is a bit higher than normal, is because essentially most departments had to bump their numbers up related to inflation. So moving to the library system. So the library system did increase their yearly ask for the library system automation up $35,000 with an overall increase of $210,000. But their overall program is relatively static. That's a minor change in terms of the overall program. And then you also see that the library system fleet replacement is scheduled in the out years. As we're probably all aware, you can return books to any library in Monroe County and they will find their way home to the right library. So the Department of Aviation. The Department of Aviation is another enterprise department of Monroe County. They also receive significant state and federal funding. In many cases, that funding is 90% from the federal and state entities. So you'll see that our share of this funding, and I'll slide right to the end here. Our share of the, let me get to the number. I have a lot going on. So they account for nearly $43 million in this funding period. However, with approximately 34 million of that is state and federal funding. So that represents about 10 million in Monroe County funding. However, one thing to note is that that spending, the total value, does take into account any debt we need to purchase to be able to move forward with the projects. And then, of course, we get reimbursed once the projects are complete from the state. And so that is a process that finance needs to manage. Even though we're only spending $10 million, we need to make sure we have the money to spend $43 million. Whoops. All right, so Department of Environmental Services, Pure Waters. So this is this is a district funded department. So what that means is the funding source is from user fees related to that district. And so anyone who lives within the Pure Waters district pays charges related to the use of that district. And so that funding does not come out of the general taxpayer county property tax or sales. But once again, it is reflected in terms of the total CIP and our ability to bond and borrow money. One thing you'll note here that this has one of the largest increases for this year's CIP. That is related to some wastewater treatment plant upgrades that need to be made to keep the effluent flowing and treated. And these changes are required and mandated by New York State, and we are undergoing a process to figure out exactly how much that will cost, but we anticipate that the funding in there is adequate for that project. All right, so Department of Environmental Services and Facilities Management. So the Department of Environmental Services is responsible for overseeing county buildings. This includes operation and maintenance and renovations or new construction. Accordingly, you will see other departments referenced in their program as other county departments of their clients. You'll see county clerk's office, public safety. As I mentioned, really the DES, they serve, they're kind of a staff line for the other departments in Monroe County who undertake either building renovations or upgrades. They do work for parks as well. You'll see a great deal of green on these slides as well. As I mentioned earlier, they focused on making sure that their numbers were as up to date as possible due to inflation. All right, so we now move to parks. Oops, nope, solid waste, excuse me. The DES Solid Waste Division has a new project scheduled for 2030, which is upgrades to their resource recovery facility site. These are mostly mechanical, electrical, and plumbing improvements, HVAC and other things. It's just an aging building that has some updates that they're anticipating that need to be made. That accounts for about $800,000 that it's been added to the CIP in the out years. One thing to note, as new projects come into the CIP, ideally we want them to be in the farthest out years, but as need and reality sometimes requires us to have those be in earlier years because something that we thought was going to last for X amount of years, we realize it actually needs to be fixed immediately or has become a priority due to safety or other issues. So you'll see that that happens throughout the departments. They, of course, try to anticipate their needs, but things do arise. So Department of Parks, and we'll get a presentation from them, so I'll go relatively quick. But Parks' new 6-year cycle is relatively steady. They do have a project that is jumping in 2025, the Durant Eastman Park drainage improvements. I'll let Park speak about that, but that is one of 2 new projects being added in this current cycle. And then also, whoops. Can we get to Seneca Park Zoo? Thank you. The new 6-year cycle for the Seneca Park Zoo remains steady at about $3 million or so. They did push out one project from 2029 to 2030. They have a project in there related to tank rehabilitation that they anticipate in the future, but they believe that they can continue to push that out for at least 1 more year. DOT highways and bridges. So one thing you'll note here, as you saw from the earlier slides, DOT highways and bridges has about $12 million of federal funding. It's not tied to any one specific project. It is spread over, I believe, 5 or 6 projects related to bridge maintenance and some roads. Some of those projects were actually advanced in the schedule due to receiving that federal funding. And if there are any questions, we can, of course, go to DOT. One thing to note, that federal funding covers 95% of those costs. So the county provides a 5% match to that $12 million. Traffic engineering. There we go. So road and bridge, I mentioned road and bridge and construction, but before that happens, and then after that happens, we need to make sure that we know what we're doing. And so the county's traffic engineering department handles the design, management, and assesses the maintenance of roads. They work with outside consultants on larger projects, but smaller projects they undertake on their own. They also are responsible for traffic control devices and signals throughout the county, and this includes for local municipalities and the city of Rochester. So a great deal of work is occurring around Monroe County, which has caused some increased funding in traffic engineering to be responsive to the municipalities that are undertaking some of that work. All right, moving on to the Department of Public Safety. The Public Safety Department's program is up just under $9 million. This is largely due to the first project, which adds approximately 1.75 million per year. This is the public safety communications equipment and device replacement. I will once again leave that to the department as they will be giving a presentation. But that is the major change that changes their schedule. And then we will get to the final department, which is the Monroe County Office of the Sheriff. So the Office of the Monroe County Sheriff's Program is up approximately $5 million and is related to the Sheriff's Body Worn Camera Project, which adds about $4.8 million over the 6-year CIP. This project is related to the increased use and availability of body worn cameras. That they have some, but they're increasing that and adding dash cameras to their road patrol vehicles, among other things. And note that the state is providing approximately $1 million for this in the 2025 year cycle. With that, we will get to the end of the presentation and the portion of the public hearing. If there are any comments on the proposed 2025-2030 capital improvement program, there is time to address them now, and they can also be submitted to Ishan Lin, Senior Planner, via that email by March 20th. If you could slide up a little bit for anyone on the by March 20th, 2024 at end of day, which is 5 p.m. If you do that, we can incorporate them in time to make it for this next planning board meeting and make sure that the board is aware of any comments we receive. With that, I will take any questions. Chairman Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. I'd like to open up to the public. Any question for the public question period? Also, any board members or questions for Mr. Gooch? Staff? Great. We did receive one question already. I'd like to read that. It is proposed 2025 through 2030 CIP public comment period submitted by Peter College, Henrietta, New York, via email March 9. In reviewing the proposed 2025 through 2030 CIP, I see that the Parks Department has a category titled Utilities, Access, and Site Improvements. The description for this category says the project provides for reconstruction and improvements to roads, parking areas, walkways, trails, bridges, patio stairs, and associated improvements such as lighting, grading, and landscaping throughout the entire park system. Yet I see little evidence that the Parks Department is maintaining or improving their parks trails. For example, the paved river trail on the east side of the river north of the canal in Genesee Valley Park has been in poor shape for years, but has not been repaved. Similarly, the canal trail itself at the eastern end of the park, just west of the former railroad bridges, has been in bad shape for years with no improvement. Further south, the county did start to put more stone dust on the Lehigh Valley Trail, but apparently tried to do this inexpensively with fixing the underlying problems in the trail bed, where regrading, drainage work, and more gravel base was needed, and ended up making this trail much more difficult for bicycles to navigate due to deep, soft areas in the trail, at least for now. And nothing is being done about continued trail erosion in the county's glacial parks, such as Mendon Ponds, Powder Mills, Ellison, and Abraham Lincoln Park. Trail work in the parks needs to be a higher priority and possibly a separate category in CIP. Thank you for considering this input. It's from Mr. Collins. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for your comments. And we can leave that. I think Parks has a copy of that and they can reply. Any other comments at this period? Hearing none, I will close this portion of the public hearing, but we'll hold the record open for public comments and questions until March 20th, and move on to the next section of the meeting.
So Chairman, I know that we have a public participation, Scott Mackay. Yeah, Scott, do you have any questions? Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure.
Thank you, Scott, for attending again. Great. We'll, so the public hearing portion is closed. We'll move on to the next item, and that is approval of the March 7th, 2024 meeting minutes. They were emailed to you, and I need a motion for those, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Orlando. Any discussion on those? Corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes have passed. Thank you. Great. Next item is our department presentations. We're fortunate today to have two. Public safety is here as well as parks. Public safety has a hard stop, I believe, at 4:30, you said, or
4:15.
4:15. Okay, great. So you're up to bat. So welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. What I'd like to be able to do is, can we pull up our PowerPoint presentation? I guess you've done that. Exceptional work. Thank you very much. So we'll go through a couple of the issues that were raised last week to be able to explain the need and the desire to be able to move forward with the proposals that are here. And I'm going to turn it over to our team to discuss the first portion of that, which is the communications and device replacement project.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Fish, Emergency Communications Administrator. I'll lead the initial discussions and got a couple other partners here to answer questions as we go. I apologize, I definitely did not make enough handouts for this crowd. So there are a couple if someone would like one over there, if anybody needs one. But in the presentation, I will kind of refer back there. The last slide is a diagram, very crudely put together just to kind of simplify, visualize for you some of the topics we're going to cover. First up with communications and device replacement. So this is a cash, as Patrick talked about, this is a cash funded CIP. It's created mainly for funding of first responder mobile data terminals, which are a computer essentially in response vehicles, fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances. That allows for connection back to our 911 center via cellular service, and that provides location of the units and who needs to be dispatched on that, and then gives them dispatch information on how to safely get to that scene and what they should expect when they get on scene there, including such things as like premise warnings, access to DMV records, firearms, things like that that are needed for situational awareness as they respond to those scenes. It also allows for driving direction and routing and rerouting based upon road closures that dispatchers can put into CAD. I'll pause there for a second on that capital project if there's questions.
So is the specific title of that one public safety communications infrastructure, or is it?
Device should be the one before bottom of the page.
Gotcha. Equipment and device replacement.
Yes, sir.
This one. Okay, great. Thank you.
What's the anticipated useful life?
So the computers themselves, given 24-hour kind of usage, we work on a 5-year replacement cycle for the computers. We are working to try to advance some of the cellular connections, the antennas that connect back to allow for higher bandwidth as we're getting into things like video streaming now, things like that. We're also trying to be able to cover alternate carrier circuits so that if one path is blocked, we can go an alternate route to get to all those responders. So we're finding, just as we all are, right, more and more cellular usage, more and more capacity of the carriers are struggling to keep up with that capacity. We're trying to stay ahead of that curve.
Thank you.
Quick question. Did you say that they're able to see if somebody has firearms in the house?
No, we have the ability, law enforcement has the ability to look up in and see if there are firearms listed or to that person, other information in DMV or on that end, they're convicted, warrants outstanding for that individual, et cetera. Once on scene, if they get information on a firearm, they can again run that through and find out if they're the registered owner of that firearm and carry forward from there. Okay. Next slide. The rest of these are all main 911 centric CIPs. These are all bonded type projects that we work on that, as Patrick mentioned, their 6-year rotating cycle that are all active in some capacity. So phone systems, and I say that plurally, I did put an S there. There are 2 systems at the 911 center that handle all incoming telephone calls. There is a 911 or call taker solution that is a very customized phone system. It's not your typical like you hear in the county office buildings. That it also feeds in the location information for that person calling, a variety of other pieces of information. If they're wireless, we get the lat long of the latitude and longitude of the tower and or the individual if they can fixate on them, as well as other information there. That is also then integrated with our computer-aided dispatch system, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then there is, and that's a redundant system between our primary center at 321 West Main, operated by our partners from the City of Rochester Emergency Communications Division. There's a backup center over at the airport at Building 400. So there's 2 halves to that system and redundancy through both paths. In parallel to that, there's an administrative system. And I say that kind of loosely because it also acts as a backup to the primary 911 phone taking system. If it encounters any overflow or problems, lines can ring down to an administrative line and the supervisor can pick up the call and service that call. That is currently underway with a refresh this year, and then you'll see a 5-year out rolling plan for a refresh of that system. Audio recording is a system that captures all incoming 911 voice traffic. It also captures all of the radio communication traffics, regardless of whether that's public safety responders or any of our other service agencies that we have on the system. And those are able to be played back or used for early discovery information back over to the DA's office as needed. So a line item that we've added with rolling out a view as more and more technology keeps coming available to us to enhance our ability to get appropriate resources to scenes quickly. This is called the systems hardware and software upgrades. That is providing for us to augment like our computer-aided dispatch environment for things like that video streaming coming in now. We can actually could in future days, as we get applications in place, allow for some 2-way video interaction with folks that maybe can't speak at that moment or want to give better visual of what's going on in a scene, as one very quick example of a technology that's on the forefront with us. The last one I have on here is our workstation replacement. This is the desktop computers that the dispatchers and telecommunicators, call takers, have to have in front of them. They have 4 screens, correct, at a time that they have to look at. One's for the radio, one is for the computer-aided dispatch. The other 2 are information resource. One will bring up a real-time map that geosyncs with the information coming in from that 911 telephone system that I mentioned, and always centers the pin drop on where that person is moving or updating to, so we can immediately take a look at the visual of what that location looks like, whether that's in the middle of a park or that's the middle of a high rise on there. That hits our 911 centric CIPs. If there's questions. Okay.
It's great. Mr. Barley had a question on the streaming last week, so that's spurred the question.
Thank you. The last major CIP that's kind of old new, it's back on our plate, is communication towers. This is our our current trunk radio system that all of our public safety and public service users are on. That is currently it sits at 22 tower locations geographically dispersed around the county. We did have an independent consultant take a look at our overall state of health of the system, given that it's been in play now for a little over 10 years, give us some recommendations. One of those was a feedback on how coverage looked today, which may well be different than what it looked like 10 years ago, either by build out of infrastructure, locations, trees are growing taller, all those kind of things. They have recommended that there's 3 locations that could benefit from a tower. And we're kind of taking next steps at looking at those locations and figuring out if we could take advantage of infrastructure we already have, or if we need to truly build out beyond that. So we're trying to be careful to not just keep dropping giant towers in the middle of people's backyards if not needed.
Chris, if I could build, this is also tied to 10 years ago, there's a lot of demographic changes here. So areas, particularly in the northeast part of Monroe County, a lot of new houses, a lot of new population, a lot of new demand for service. Same thing around northwest Monroe County, right? So building out towards Hilton, Hamlin area, Spencerport, Rockport area. In addition, existing coverage that we have in the city of Rochester, one on the north side of the city, northern part of the city, Mount Reed area. Again, some changes in building construction, changes in industry, and just general feedback from the users in the system, whether that's fire, law enforcement, or EMS around, hey, we've got some buildings, we're deep into some buildings that we weren't previously. So it's a safety factor for responders. So we put all those together, assess that with a third party. That's why we come back with this recommendation.
Now, I know some of the first responders, at least fire department, is my area have complained because the new building standards for better insulation types, that they go about 20 feet into a building and they lose all connection, and they're always worried about that because if they're going to fire building blind, they get told to back out, they can't hear their commanders. Is that supposed to solve some of that, or is that a whole different issue?
It's related, depends on location. So certainly adding towers can create better penetration, reach into those buildings.
So haven't you done some building site or towers or antennas specifically in buildings?
Yes, sir. Great call. So New York State Building Code does have a section. It references back to a National Fire Protection standard that talks about in-building coverage and what that map should look like for compliant, support to public safety responders. That's kind of new to New York State, and especially to the code enforcement and buildings departments. We've done some outreach over the last couple of years, and to your point, successfully started to work with several of the towns and villages now to get, as new construction occurs, internal building antenna solutions installed. So the 2 Amazon facilities have built BEAs in as an example. We are at literally real time today. 2 of my techs are over at that life cycle facility. The warehouse is actually functioning, and they had a little bit of a challenge with their BDA and some engineering. We went back over there and they're helping them kind of retune that, if you will, for benefit. Specific to our fire community and knowing about their in-building concerns, we have provided all of our fire departments in the county vehicle repeaters that are attached in their vehicles and that boost that signal locally as well. So they have multiple layers that we can try to overcome a target hazard area.
Yeah, because the existing building code says you don't have to do anything unless you.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that is a little bit of a challenge here once the horse has left the barn.
I think they talked about like Amazon building where they have a lot of robots in there and a lot of wiring, so all the wiring and all the electric flying through there interrupts the strength of the thing.
And all of that green energy solution, right? Those tinted windows, the heavy insulation on these buildings, all of anything that creates a barrier between for that radio to penetrate. And the last picture was that picture. So if anybody, hopefully that kind of walked the flow of where things sit and reside relative to all those projects we just kind of talked about and agenda the.
One of the questions we had last week was the coverage, and Christina said, you're over 95%, you're over the required 95% of coverage in like downtown and things like that. Is there, are there any spots that, as part of that review that they say, we need to, or is this, does this address that?
That is kind of
This
addressing that,
address,
correct.
okay. Where, how, you know, if we're at 95 point something now, what is this gonna bring us up to roughly?
It's a great
98 or something like that? There's a point of diminishing returns, I imagine.
There is, and the theoretical will take you up a couple percent, but it will, until it's there and actually coverage, hard to give you that full
Yeah,
honest answer on that.
that makes sense. I imagine the mobile helps, you know, having the truck repeaters and the technology on the person is probably going to change as well. So.
Yes, very much so.
Any questions for public safety?
Very supportive, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you for the great presentation. Thank you for coming in. So, next presentation is Parks. It's here today. We had some interest last week, both from board members and from the public. And so we welcome Parks here today.
Thank you, Chairman.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Where public safety had 5 slides, I might have more. For that I apologize, but I'll try to be fast with them.
Well, we were.
There's like 31 of them, so
We were.
that's not really a joke.
You've done so much work. And we're.
A lot of pictures.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pictures.
Yeah. You've been very busy. I wanted to, you know, give you a chance to come in and promote what you've done.
Thank you. On behalf of the department, we have been very busy in parks, and that busyness has really started with the Go Outside Monroe initiative that was really spearheaded by the county executive, and with funding through the county legislature, we were able to invest, modify the capital improvement to move forward with a $16.6 million investment in the county park system. The focus for that project was to bring the Parks Department back to revitalize and revamp our existing facilities, to bring that long overdue and much needed maintenance for and across the park system for our constituency. In addition to that project, there have been many other capital improvements that have been made over the last 4 years, from the War on Terror Memorial to the Trailside Cafe, all the way down to projects that are currently in design, such as the Children's Pavilion and the 9/11 Memorial at Highland Park. So quickly, again, this will be a lot of slides, a lot of pictures, but just want to try to give the board and thank the board for the opportunity to come in and show the great work we have been doing here in the Parks Department. So again, the Go Outside Monroe initiative is really that first initial investment. It's a over $16 million investment, which sees the revitalization of all of our tennis and pickleball courts throughout the park system, in-house restroom renovations for all of our exterior restrooms that are at each one of our parks. When I say in-house, that's our parks plumber, our parks carpenters, our parks electrician, our painter, our mason, all providing those services interior to the county, self-performing that work, being able to make sure that we are spreading these dollars farther. For the larger, more substantial renovations, those have been bid packages, and I know Sean's in this room and Sean can attest the amount of work Parks has been doing. Traditionally, Parks has had one PM, one project manager through DES, spearheading all of our renovations and construction projects. There hasn't been a PM that hasn't worked on a Parks Department project. So all 6 have had projects over the last 4 years, with much of them coming in the last several here. So those contract renovations moving through bidding, seeing those investments in the ADA accessibility at all of the restrooms throughout the system. The new overlook restroom at Highland Park has been built. Over $2.5 million worth of roads have been resurfaced and parking lots have been resurfaced through the park system. Again, we've got contract roofing projects that have happened where metal roofs have been installed on many of our facilities where, we've had leaking roof systems traditionally. And then we've had in-house roofing projects where, again, our parks carpenters and our park staff have been willing and able to perform those duties, again, spreading those dollars farther. We've seen lighting upgrades throughout the park system, specifically on Ontario Beach Park. A massive project renovating and restoring all of the doors, frames, and hardware throughout all of these exterior bathrooms. These facilities get used constantly every day during the summer. The wear and tear, rust and corrosion, and ultimately the rot through 30 years worth of use, very much needed project there. We've seen some new improvements at our golf courses. The paving of continuous golf cart paths at all 3 of our courses, which allows patrons to utilize those golf carts earlier in the spring and later in the fall. Over 70% of our users use golf carts and they won't go golfing without a golf cart. So what an amenity to be able to provide to ensure that our patrons can continue to play even during kind of wet adverse conditions well after a rain event. We've installed new playgrounds at Powder Mills Park and Ontario Beach Park, a synthetic ice rink at the Ontario Beach Park, and a public survey to kind of move through that concession stand, formal concession stand planning. We've increased the number of pickleball courts, and we've moved forward with underground electrical upgrades that have been in design and planning for more than 10 years at Highland Park. So that's really the Go Outside Monroe initiative in and of itself, broken down by a variety of different projects to revitalize our park system. Again, from the resurfacing of tennis ball and pickleball courts, some of the interior renovations and exterior renovations, all completed in-house by our mason, our carpenters, our electrician, our plumber, our painter, and then our contract restrooms. This one specifically at Highland Park, the site of the future site of the Children's Pavilion, directly adjacent. This overlook restroom was long since closed, now reopened, a amenity for the Lilac Festival, another restroom to be able to be used during festival season, and ultimately a future restroom to be used at the Children's Pavilion site. Again, some of the examples of the paving across the systems are stark, from roads that had not been used in 5 or 6 years because there was 3 feet of mud on them, to craters in different areas and historically flooded zones at Powder Mills Park. You can't go to a county park without seeing some of the investments made specifically in the roadways and parking lots. At Ellison Park, this is just one example of our crews going out and roofing this. This is South Lodge, I believe, from cedar shake to going over the top and being able to put asphalt shingles on. Securing that lodge, being able to ensure that patrons' families can continue to utilize that for birthday parties to family get-togethers for years to come. Some of the contract roofing, these are metal roofs at Genesee Valley and at Ellison Park. Lighting upgrades, this is from from sodium haloid to LED conversions. The doors, frames, and hardware project. Again, this is just but one of many doors, dozens of doors being replaced in the park system. Paving of our golf course paths for our golf carts. As part of that project, there's also several sub-projects, the releveling of golf tee boxes and several drainage projects that have occurred at multiple. These at Durand, there's at least one at Genesee Valley for tee boxes, and we have plans for increased drainage improvements at Durand specifically. Powder Mills Park, we broke ground early last spring on a brand new playground, self-performed that installation, and that was up in service before the real kickoff of summer and Memorial Day. The inclusive, something I'm personally very excited about, the inclusive playground and spray park at Ontario Beach Park. This design kind of replicating the Genesee River all the way down to Lake Ontario. Inclusive features our first inclusive playground for any individual with a variety of different special needs. To the left and to the right are spray park, which should be operational by summer this year. So as soon as the beach opens up, that spray park should be operational. Our first spray park in the system, I should know. Both of which were longstanding items in the Charlotte Vision Plan and Charlotte Community Association plans. Our synthetic ice ring, another improvement on Ontario Beach Park for our constituency, and again, noticed and noted in the vision plans. Our pickleball courts, an immensely popular attraction at both Black Creek Park and Mendon Ponds Park, utilizing vacant space, being able to bring that attraction to the general constituency. Our Highland Park Underground Electric Project, which will be operational by Lilac Festival. So I know this is music to Sean's ears and probably at many people's ears. They won't have to hear the rumming of the multiple generators, diesel generators that power the festival, having all of that now underground.
Not to mention air quality.
Air quality, 100%. And that's just some of the Go Outside Monroe initiative, really a project that started 2.5 years ago and still continues now with the construction of a new labor center that is slated, renovations to the carousel at Ontario Beach Park, replacement of wood burning stoves throughout more than a dozen park facilities, the Mendon Ponds waterline investigation, mapping and repair, a chronic area where we had multiple different water main breaks through the years, and a canoe kayak launch at Churchville Park. So just that project, that initiative still carries on through as we still seek to finish out that record $16.6 million investment in the park system. That main focus, again, to bring the county park system back, bring it back to where it once was. In addition to that initiative led by the county executive, we have had multiple different capital improvements that have come before the planning board. First and foremost, kind of going back just 4 years ago, the War on Terror Memorial was one that I believe EDR was the Cardinal Judas. Cardinal Judas, I believe, was the A&E firm here. You know, being able to provide that space complementary to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial at Highland Park, really our memorial park. The Trailside Cafe recently opened at the Seneca Park Zoo, really taking the place of the longstanding, now closed Eagles Landing. Interior renovations to the bathrooms, HVAC upgrades, bringing new heating and cooling to the second floor main room, and ultimately replacing the vast majority of the windows and doors at the Roger J. Robach Community Center at Charlotte. The Lamberton Conservatory boiler project, where we saw new boilers installed, fin tubing replaced throughout the facility, now being able to provide constant heat through every month of the year, ensuring that the plant and horticultural specimens inside the conservatory are well preserved. The Northampton Ski Lodge project, which again brought an addition to the south end of the ski lodge, putting 2 new toilets, lavatories in there for and in support of our partners at Swain, one of our 2 different areas where we partner for downhill skiing within the park system. Construction of a new lodge at Knollwood, at Northampton, the Knollwood Lodge, a long historically important, I would say, lodge at that park that is constantly being rented by local patrons, however, was not accessible. Individuals had to go outside to utilize the restrooms, which were outside and downstairs. Now a fully accessible new lodge for families to use over on the west side. Construction of a new dog park, really in coordination and collaboration with the town of Webster, who brought forth this concept, went through a lot of the public outreach for this concept, And then state funding came in, really affording a brand new dog park to be operational within the county park system at zero cost to the county of Monroe. Much of the work, though, completed by our support services and in-house crews. The Genesee Valley Synthetic Pitch and Putt Practice Facility, which came before this board last year, seeing a new 14,000 square foot facility for and to be used by the general public in that underserved community, that focus there to teach that game of golf. Very happy to partner with PGA, who donated a $250,000 towards this project. And the future 9/11 Memorial Project, again, another grant project here. I think this one sponsored by Assembly Member Bronson to bring a 9/11 specific memorial, not just a war on terror to Highland, but a 9/11 project, a memorial to Highland Park. These are just but a few of the projects, the capital projects that we have done over the last 4 years. And again, appreciate the time to just quickly roll through as fast as I can talk some of the 30-something slides of some of what we've been working on in parks. You know, we have more to do. These are, again, just the capital projects that have been conducted. We have seen a multitude of smaller scale projects completed by our in-house crews that don't rise to the level of, you know, a capital fund, but do come out of the 1918, which is the utilities and improvements, or the 1921 buildings and grounds funds. And so, you know, while the much of county parks is one where we see questions and comments about either the park system at the state level or the county level or the town level, you know, some of which we have jurisdiction over, some of which where we don't. You know, the email that was received by the planning board is interesting in the sense that most of that is probably state parks related in the beginning of it, but the Lehigh Valley Trail is a great example of where, you know, we went through last year and renovated nearly 5.5 miles of a trail, ripping up really the deteriorated and overgrown material that consisted of the trail, and then moving back through with brand new fresh stone dust. And so it does take some time to pack that back in, and time will get that kind of back to where it needs to be, but over 20-something miles throughout the county to work on. So just about a small sense of kind of that interior and exterior to the capital project, but interior to our operating funds to be able to put forth the great park systems that we have. So quick, I tried to go as fast as I could, probably too late, too long, but happy to field any questions.
Questions for parks?
Was there stuff in the plan that the prior draft that took some things out? I mean, because the CIP is lower than it is currently. Flat, let's call it. And the Go Outside initiative is still ongoing.
It is, yeah. So the Go Outside Monroe project is still ongoing. We still have several more projects. The more dynamic ones that have more environmental permitting components to them. And so for the coming CIP year, the 25 to 30 program, we had one new project, which was more of an emergency project that came through at Durand. But ultimately, the focus of the department continues to be the completion of the Go Outside Monroe initiative. The new labor center at Powdermills Park is much needed. Staff members currently, you know, vacating the vast majority of that labor center due to hazardous conditions inside, to the renovation of Canatola Lodge, a lodge that's been out of service since 2014. So that's the primary. We try to hold flat on our requests in capital, knowing that we're still working on that Go Outside Monroe initiative.
The trail maintenance, is that done with staff?
Yes, it is. So there's a variety of different, you know, trail maintenance is so broad and encompassing, from footbridges over small creeks at Black Creek Park, which we are constantly being rebuilt throughout the system, to the Lehigh Valley Trail, which is, I believe, the main sum and substance of the note that came to play. The part of it is definitely a state parks issue with regard to the Genesee Valley Trail there, but the Lehigh Valley Trail is absolutely a county parks related issue. That is a very specific component where we have a partner, the Mendon Foundation, that maintains on a given basis, on a daily basis, the park there. However, these large scale style improvements are such that we have partnered with the town of Mendon Highway Department to perform some of it, but given the dynamics and the speed at which we were looking to get it done, and you know, the town has, their highway department has other duties in addition to, you know, getting a contract work from the county. So our park staff went in there to complete that. So we try to maximize the amount of internal workforce that we can in the self-performing of jobs. However, the over $2.5 million worth of paving was done with the town of Webster, the town of Parrington, the town of Arundecoy, Ogden, Sweden. All of our partners in the highway department are very, very helpful for us.
I'll just add to, Brock is a partner with us. They do maintain some bike trails, off-road bike trails in Bay Road Park West and Tryon Park.
You use the towns, because if you use the private contractor, you have to pay prevailing wage, where a town doesn't have to pay a prevailing wage to their employees for county projects. Is that how that works?
I'd phrase it differently.
Okay.
But I would say it's a mutually beneficial way to go about partnering. Where the two the towns book revenue from county DOT for work or from other county agencies such as parks. That revenue comes into their budgets, which elevates their ability to purchase equipment or onboard more staff members. For the county, it provides us the opportunity to, when it's convenient for the town to fit into their schedule, have that extra workforce to be able to bring in
snowplow in rural county.
No,
It's one of the few counties that don't have a snowplow.
And Tom's on the Zoom. He 100% would kind of go right through how that snow and ice program works on a chargeback basis. But for parks, it's advantageous for us because we don't have a bulldozer. We have very few 1-ton or 6-wheel or 10-wheel dump trucks. We don't have a grader. We don't have a large scale excavator. And so being able to utilize those partnering agencies, especially when we have work in Webster Park and the highway department's right down the road, it's an easy back charge to be able to fill potholes or do large scale renovations. So mutually beneficial is probably the better way I would put it.
From the Department of Transportation, not to prolong this, but like Bob said, it's critical because we don't even have equipment to plow roads or enough people, because we've been relying on the towns for decades for snow and ice removal, for doing work for our county DOT highway and bridge operations. Basically, they make revenue for their town from our county projects, and that's how they keep a lot of their staff on during the summer who are plowing the roads in the winter.
Well, it started that way. We don't have a town truck and a county truck going down the same road trying to plow different roads. Yeah.
Sure.
But you don't realize rural counties started that a long time ago. It's one of the few counties still in the state that does that. We actually plow some state roads.
The towns, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being both former town highway superintendents, we can do absolutely. The towns plow state roads as well.
More on a location thing, and the park that's near me, Northampton, there's a lot of ash trees.
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of them that are almost falling on the road on Kobe Road and Route 31, but I think the state's been taking care of them. And the trail system in there, I see you were in there recently, but
After every windstorm, we have to be in there.
I mean, it's gotta be tremendous in there, because another month from now, there'll be a few trees, and there'll be all these brown sticks sticking up.
We have had at least 2 staff members at Northampton all winter long, and that's been their job. We just saw Chris yesterday when we were out there looking at the new lodge, and they're They're constantly doing trail maintenance because of the ash trees. And on the backside,
Oh,
we're also then doing the planting to make sure that the next generation of trees is able to grow there. And it's
a lot
not
of
just
those
a,
trees were originally planted by Boy Scouts. All those pine trees were planted by Boy Scouts. But I guess what I'd like to bring up on a safety issue is part of the road along Kobe Street. It's one of the highest deer accident places in the county. And part of the park along there, over the years, they've moved the trees back from the road edge. Especially as you get down by the park road down there. Then there's a section almost up to Hubble where they isn't brought back. But what that does is where you guys move back the brush and the trees, when the deer pop out, it gives the deer a chance to stop and it's a chance for the car person to respond. I wonder if there's any way we could do that all the way down through there, because I can tell you it's right there where I live. I can tell you there's a deer getting hit every week.
I say between Hubble eastbound.
Eastbound especially,
Eastbound,
but there's a little bit westbound. You did most of it, but then there's a section right in the middle that you came from one way.
Hubble to Sweden Walker.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in the middle, there's a section up there, but right across from the cemetery, you know where I'm talking about, right across from the cemetery, right where you have that little entrance to the trail system,
Absolutely.
because then you've been mowing it.
Yeah, and that keeps the.
It gives the motorists and the deer a fighting chance to miss each other. It really, because you go look where the deer are being hit, or I go see the car that I have to go stop, help the person. It's usually right where the deer come out and they can't be seen. And on the other side, they can see because either it's open farmland or the horse farm.
I help with scout projects often. And I recently ran into someone there's a couple entities that review trails, review facilities for accessibility. Is that something that you talk to people about, or some of these experts just specialists that, work with people and they say, okay, we need a rest stop here because they're only gonna be able to walk so far, they're handicapped, or there's an access point, geez, you have bollards here, we can't get through there with, wheelchair or whatever. So is that something that you look at?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The vast majority of our restroom renovations specifically, and I'll use just that as an
Sure.
example, and then we can talk about trails in a minute, but that was focused on making sure that individuals can utilize our park system that have different needs.
Sure.
Knollwood's probably our to be open sometime here this spring. That'll be our most inclusive lodge, where there's an adult changing station in it, where everything is on one story. It's a handicap ramp all the way in. So it'll be the most accessible lodge within the system, as opposed to the least accessible lodge, which was the old Knoll, where you had to walk downstairs to go into the restroom. So some examples of that, absolutely.
Do you have the trails? My question was more towards trails. Do you have them marked as to say, oh, hey, this trail is accessible and these trails are not. So don't use those for now. We're working on them, that sort of thing. Is
No,
there
I see what you mean.
grading
Yeah,
system for
gradation
that?
of it,
Yeah.
similar to like a downhill skiing, you don't do the double
Right.
diamonds, do
Right.
the green
You
circle,
got it.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know. if
Just
we
an
have that.
idea.
I appreciate that.
So we do occasionally, we'll have issues about motorcyclists and stuff on the trails down around Seneca Park.
Yeah.
And we put creative things along the trail to try to,
Sure.
prohibit that.
Yeah.
Then it starts to block people with strollers or
Yeah.
other things. So then we get the call. So we,
Yeah.
we have to keep at least a minimum
Yeah.
opening. So
Yeah.
in some areas that people use them, and need 36 inches, we hear from them,
Gotcha.
when we've, inadvertently closed off too much.
Understood. Yeah. Good. Any other questions for parks? Well, thank you for coming in. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the project.
Thanks, folks.
Continue.
Appreciate the opportunity to present.
All right, next item is item 5, and that is we're gonna call up Mr. Gooch again. He's gonna have instructions for you on the 2025, 2030 capital budget. It's actually just the 2025 priority vote, right?
Yep.
And the CIP.
Instructions for the members. Ballots.
So as we're passing those out, I can get started. What we have up here and what planning board members will receive both on paper today and via email is a copy of instructions that for some of you look very familiar, for some of you may look new. But in Legislative Colby, I'll get you set up on the CIP app again.
Okay.
And if you want, you can also use paper, so whatever works for you.
That's for me.
Well, then we can keep that copy and you can get it back to me via scan or the next meeting.
All the papers.
So for all planning board members, you are, we would like you to prioritize the 2025 budget year. And so there is a list online that you can do. It's much like a Google form essentially, or there's a paper version that you can take home to reference. And what that allows you to do is rank from 1 to 5 the projects that are scheduled for 2025, or I should say proposed. And it gives you the estimated budget. It tells you where the money's coming from, all the details that we presented in a slide, but just for those years. 1 is the highest priority for you. 2 is medium, high, 3 is medium, 4 is medium low, 5 is low priority. Of course, there's more projects than numbers, so please identify all the ones that you would like to see. Sometimes it's hard to pick. And what we'll do is aggregate those for the next meeting, and we'll use that as a way to understand what are the priorities for this board, which in the event that we need to prioritize spending because we either do not have enough funds or there needs to be a change in the projects, we have the ability to do that and submit that to the county legislature to provide them some guidance. And then also, I believe the next board, a form in a different county, a chairman of the planning board referred to it as the sniff test. You will review that ranking and identify, is there anything here that you think is out of place? Because sometimes when you're looking at the whole list of numbers, things can get moved around in places that you don't necessarily love. So you have the opportunity to review that, decide if everything is exactly as you want it. And then we have that due by, I believe, the 20th before the next meeting. Is that correct, Ishan?
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
To 20th, March 20th, that Wednesday.
So we have about a week or just under a week to do that. Once again, can be done digitally, so you can do it now or then, or you can use the paper copy and submit it to me. In terms of the online, I'll also be sending the email out to all board members with instructions, so that way you can refresh your memories on this, because of course this is not adequate for that. But if you have any questions on that, please reach out to me. The process for old board members is exactly the same as you would have done it last year. So I know it's something that you do once a year, so it's probably a little tricky, but I will happily help walk you through any steps that you need. And any way you can get that back to me is good by me. Questions on that?
No,
Chairman Santos, is there anything that you want to mention in regards to past directions that maybe I left off?
No, that's great. Thank you, Pat. Actually, we have had instances where we've moved projects. The water authority's new plant was one that came in very low on the rating system when it did, and we moved it up just from a health and safety standpoint. I think part of that was from a cost standpoint. You know, some people just vote, and this is, you can vote anyway. There's a reason why you're on this board. So you bring those characteristics to the board, and we want you to vote that way. So whether it's you think certain things are more important than others, whether you're cost related, whether it's this or that, that's fine. Whatever way you have for thinking, just mark it down and submit your priority. So with that, go ahead.
So I tried to log in 3 times and sent a reset link. It doesn't work for me. So who would I contact?
I can make sure I get you a new reset or a new link tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions for that, for priority voting? So please, reminder, submit them by Wednesday. Any other business? Hearing none, our next scheduled meeting is March 21st, and we will, there'll be a couple votes there. We will have the priority vote listing. We will also have the CIP vote. So that's a week from today. It's at 3 p.m. the new time. And then if all goes well and we don't have any items, then we could cancel our 3/28 meeting. But right now we have our standard March 28th meeting at the normal 3:30 time. I need a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Dave. Is there a second?
Them?
To Andrew. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks for coming in, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.